Julius Caesar was a Roman general who led his armies to decisive victories, stretching the dominion of Rome from the sands of Africa to the shores of Britain. Caesar was a fair-minded ruler who governed with wisdom. He was known for his fairness in legal matters, showing mercy to enemies, and enacting laws that worked for the good of Rome. However, for all his successes, Caesar could not escape the one element we all share: human error. In fact, Caesar committed serious mistakes that brought about his downfall and drove his own men to assassinate him in the end. Stay with me and let's uncover the mistakes of Julius Caesar. Long before Caesar's time, Rome was ruled by a king known as Tarquin the Proud. He reigned with tyranny and oppression, leading to his eventual overthrow and the establishment of the Roman Republic in 509 BC. Supreme authority, once held by the king, was now vested in two consuls. They were elected to serve together and each had equal power. They were to collaborate on legislation, consult each other before making decisions, and bring their proposed bills to the Senate for a vote. Once that happened, the consul could take the bill to the people for a final vote at the forum in order to enact the law. This legislative system was not designed for speed or efficiency, but it was built with intentional blocks and checks to prevent any one man or faction from imposing their will too easily. This represented the core principle of the Republic and its intolerance to unchecked power. Nevertheless, Julius Caesar disregarded all that and did as he pleased. His relentless ambition and tenacity propelled him to rise through the ranks at a scary speed until he was elected consul, ruling jointly with his co-consul Marcus Bibulus. In 59 BC, Caesar introduced a land bill to the Senate, but he faced fierce opposition and the bill was refused to come to a vote. In an act of defiance, Caesar bypassed the Senate and went directly to the people for a vote in the forum. His co-consul, Bibulus, tried to veto the legislation but failed miserably. Caesar's soldiers attacked him, beat him up, poured a bucket of excrement on his head, and drove him away by force. Next day, Bibulus declared a vote of censure in the Senate, but no one dared to stand up to Caesar then, out of fear they might meet the same fate. Bibulus, humiliated and powerless, withdrew from public life, and thus Caesar was able to effectively rule alone and unencumbered. This wasn't the only time Caesar demonstrated his tyranny. To be clear, consuls could only rule for 1 year, and then they became private citizens again, subject to the very laws they had enacted and answerable for their past actions in office. This was a deliberate attempt to hold them to account, and so that no man can accumulate too much power for himself. After Caesar finished his term in 59 BC, he knew his enemies in the Senate would prosecute him for his illegal acts in the past. So he resolved to secure himself a position of legal immunity. Caesar retained the governorship of a massive territory which lies outside Rome's jurisdiction. For years, Caesar has waged war on the people of Gaul, capturing territory, slaves, and plunder. With his newfound wealth, he enlarged his army and enriched his supporters back in Rome. Through his brilliant leadership, he fostered an intense degree of loyalty with his army and built an independent power base outside the bounds of the Republic. This represented a great threat to the Roman Senate. Caesar was no longer just another politician. He had become a sovereign power, operating outside the established order. His rivals in Rome watched in horror as he became too powerful to be controlled by any republican law. As Caesar's command neared its end in Gaul, his opponents in the Senate wanted to prosecute him for his controversial actions during his year-long tenure as consul. They saw him as a criminal and an outlaw, and they were determined to bring him down. Consequently, the Senate ordered him to disband his army and return home. But Caesar did anything but that. He instead marched on Rome and claimed it for himself. By doing so, he set the Republic on a path to civil war. But in the end, Caesar emerged victorious after defeating his biggest rival, Pompey the Great. Over the following years, Caesar expanded the Senate and filled it with only men who supported him and followed his lead. Caesar accumulated offices and honors with which he became ever more powerful. He was first appointed dictator of Rome for 1 year in 49 BC, then reassumed the role in 46 BC with an extended tenure of 10 years. Eventually, he was appointed dictator for life in 44 BC. Caesar never formally called himself king, but he essentially operated as one. He presided over predetermined elections, filled the Senate with clients and loyalists, centralized religious authority, economic policy, and military command under himself. He even began wearing purple robes, reserved only for royalty, sat on a golden chair at the head of the Senate, rode in a chariot made for triumphant kings, and issued coins with his face on it. The Republic was no more. Rome was once again ruled by a king, a tyrant. In a city that had previously overthrown its kings and deeply resented the idea of monarchy, this was an abomination which gave cause for Caesar's assassination in the end. While celebrated for his military genius and political reforms, Julius Caesar committed many acts of corruption in order to serve his own ends and fulfill his ambitions. Early in his career, Caesar understood that in this fiercely competitive world of Roman politics, influence was a valuable commodity and it had to be bought and paid for. So he plunged himself into substantial debt to fund his campaign and garner support from the Roman people. And although Caesar later cashed in the support of the people, he became heavily indebted around the year 60 BC. So Caesar exploited his governorship of further Spain to pay off his massive debts. He instigated military campaigns to generate plunder. He sacked towns and cities, captured slaves, and seized so much gold and silver from local provinces and tribes. Not only did he pay off his debts, he enriched his soldiers by giving them a handsome share of the spoils, further cementing their loyalty to him personally. Caesar's 9-year campaign in Gaul was the pinnacle of his strategy for personal enrichment and enhancing his political standing. Caesar's spoils from the Gallic Wars were staggering, earning him more gold, more silver, and more slaves beyond counting. Subsequently, he doubled the pay of his legionaries, making them the best paid and most loyal army to him. He bribed key political figures in Rome, ensuring their loyalty and support. He also funded massive public works in Rome, like the Forum of Caesar, which was a monument not to the Republic, but to his own hubris and legacy. In effect, Caesar's corruption was not only a flaw, but a central pillar of his political strategy. His ultimate power stemmed directly from his loyal army and vast wealth he acquired from his conquests, which ultimately allowed him to challenge and overthrow the Republic, leading to his rise as dictator of Rome. In ancient Roman religion, Clemency was the goddess of mercy and forgiveness. Her virtue is now celebrated as one of Caesar's chief qualities. Julius Caesar demonstrated clemency not just once, but many times without number. After his decisive victory against Pompey, he famously rode out through the defeated enemy camp, urging his men to spare the citizens. He offered a full pardon to any Roman who laid down their arms and pardoned the treasonous senators who opposed him in the fight. One of those men was named Brutus, who was a direct descendant from the legendary founder of the Roman Republic, Lucius Junius Brutus. Caesar not only pardoned him, but restored his title as senator, granting him high honors and making him praetor, placing him at the center of the Roman government in 44 BC. This was a fatal and colossal mistake, one which Caesar would pay with his life. Caesar's mercy did not inspire devotion or gratitude. It only bred resentment among the senators, especially the staunch Republicans. They saw that their precious republic had been overtaken by a tyrant and planned to take matters into their own hands. In 44 BC, Caesar was scheduled for a meeting at the Senate by midday. As he entered the chamber, a group of senators gathered around, pretending to present a petition to him. Then suddenly and out of nowhere, Caesar was struck by a dagger below the throat. The men banded around and stabbed him more than 20 times until he bled to death. When it was all over, the murderers fled the scene, leaving Caesar lying dead beneath the statue of his vanquished enemy. The assassins were mostly among the pardoned men Caesar had spared, and at their head was Brutus. It is said that Caesar was deeply aggrieved at his betrayal, that he uttered these final words to him, "You too, Brutus?" In the end, Caesar's clemency, while admirable, created many silent enemies who eventually turned on him, causing his downfall. Julius Caesar was a force to be reckoned with. He had expanded Rome's dominion, crushed his enemies, and stood as the undisputed dictator of Rome. But in his quest for power, he made many mistakes that doomed him eventually. He underestimated his people's hatred for tyranny and pardoned his sworn enemies, who ultimately murdered him to preserve the Republic. Caesar's story then leaves us with two important questions. Questions that every leader must ask themselves. What could Caesar have done differently to avoid his tragic fate? And what lessons can we learn from his story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you have found this video insightful, like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos on the mistakes of history. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.